All right, let's try this again. Hello, my name is Amy Palmer. I'm coming to you live from Charlottetown, PEI. It is a beautiful, almost spring day outside today. The sun is in and out of the clouds, but it is above zero. It was raining this morning. The snow was melting. So I'm quite happy today with that. Today on the live, I am going to talk to you about IRAC and the role that IRAC has in both regulating the rental market on PEI and then also as the overseer of the Lands Protection Act that exists on PEI and the role that IRAC has. So if you spend any amount of time on any of the PEI Facebook groups like Ask PEI or even some of the rental groups or moving to PEI for like property advertising groups on PEI. If you go to any of those, then you're always going to see questions about IRAC. And Ask PEI, I swear every 2 weeks, it's like, what's going to happen with gas tonight? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? So IRAC does kind of have a lot to do with regulating things on PEI. They are a non-governmental organization, so they are not elected officials. It is hired, but they oversee and implement legislation brought in by the government. They are technically non-biased, I would say. They're theoretically supposed to be with any of their programs and decisions. However, people love to hate them on PEI. So that's just a bit of a little, here's what you probably have seen. Brooke is not with me today. She is off doing some showings with some clients right now. They have blah, blah, blah. I can't talk today. The clients are people that are looking to move to PEI for a program. She's off showing them some great houses. They're here for the weekend. So unfortunately she couldn't be here today with me. So I'm just going to be riffing with myself over here. So it's probably going to be a little bit less entertaining. But I will try to keep it short and sweet. It's not going to be too long because there's only really two things that we're talking about today. So the first one is the rental market. Or let's even just back up a step and say, what does IRAC stand for? IRAC, IRAC, stands for the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission. So they regulate things like the rate that electricity is charged and any increases that Maritime Electric can implement. They regulate insurance. They regulate petroleum prices. So whether it's furnace oil, propane, diesel, gasoline, any of those things, for the most part, the prices of those products don't change every day. It is a stabilized market that we have here. So the price of gas tends to be changed every 2 weeks, I think it is. On a Thursday. Like I said, there's always somebody on Ask PEI being like, what's gas gonna do tonight? Because it gets reset at midnight or something. So they're always trying to figure out if they should fill up on Wednesday night or wait till tomorrow and get a better price. So they do that. They also do the rental market. I feel like there's something else. And then the Lands Protection Act. So we will talk about the LPA or the Lands Protection Act a bit later. But first, let's talk about the rental market. So on PEI, today, you are required to have a lease. It used to just be that if you didn't actually sign an official lease, then you were bound by the normal rules of the lease, whether or not you signed it. However, today, you are required to sign a lease, and it is pretty much standard that you use the IRAC standard form. So on the rental office PEI.ca page is all the forms that you would be using as either a landlord or a renter. One of the biggest things to note is that Hi, Joe. Yes, I see you just asked a question. The discussion is starting. You should see the live right there. It's on the event page of this. So, yes. So one thing to note is that rental increases can happen only once a year, and it is tied to a calendar year, not on like the year lease that you sign. So if the landlord always does rent increases on January 1st and your lease runs from like May to April, you will have probably a rental increase on January 1st. There is a specific form that your landlord has to give to you that tells you the date that it is going to start, the new rent increase will be implemented. They have to give you like 3 months notice on this, and they are only allowed to raise it by a certain percentage. So I believe last year it was 2 or 3%. It's not a lot. And that's why a lot of landlords today are trying to get out of the landlording business, because they are very much being restricted on their ability to even just pay their bills sometimes. The rental market in PEI is a bit contentious right now, just because rents have increased so much. The vacancy rate is essentially zero at this point. Any new rental that's coming onto the market, it's probably not going to be less than $2,000 a month. So you're seeing a lot of these things kind of clashing together. You have landlords that aren't even really making any money. It's actually costing them to have a rental unit. You have tenants that aren't able to save any money because rent prices are so high. It's a very contentious time for renting. With that being said, if there is any disputes with your landlord, it also goes through IRAC. So if you're saying the landlord has erroneously increased the rent by 5%, they were only allowed to go 2%, then you can submit a form to IRAC. IRAC will then probably hold a hearing, in which case they will hear the landlord side, they'll hear the tenant side. It's pretty easy. I've been in some of these before. It's done on the phone. People just basically call in like a conference call. The hearing coordinator, adjudicator is there. They do the whole process. It's very easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. And they actually do get through it on a fairly quick pace. Like, you're not left waiting for months and months and months. That's the big thing. So rent increases are, like I said, they are mandated. They're limited to the calendar year. Even when a tenant changes over, a landlord cannot use that time to reset the rental rate. So one of the blanks on the form is like, this tenant or this unit was previously rented for this amount for these dates. So that is included on the rental form when you're renting a unit, when you're signing a lease, okay? There is a rental registration. It's not highly used right now, mostly because landlords don't want to put their units on the registration, because then it's an officially, this is what my rent is. They're not trying to get more money out of people, but it's just like, it can be a liability if this is a registered amount that the unit's being rented for. So there is that. I will say that if you have any questions, IRAC is very good. You just kind of give them a call, you leave them a message. They then forward your message on to the best handler who can answer it the best. And then they call you back, usually within 2 to 3 business days. It's not that bad. I have been both a tenant and I have been a landlord, and I do and have managed properties for landlords as well. So from the perspective that I haven't really had any hate for IRAC, but there are a lot of people out there that do have a lot of contention with the rental board. if you are a landlord, then it is very important that you are knowledgeable about your responsibilities, because there are so many responsibilities. I will also say that if you are coming here and you're looking for a rental, there are a lot of scams out there, because the rental rate or the vacancy rate is essentially zero. Like I just even checked again last night. It is essentially, there is no vacant units. It's a prime market for scammers to try and put fake rentals up and get people to send them deposit money. I had a friend, an acquaintance, who is living here in Charlottetown. She's like, Amy, I'm pretty sure I'm being scammed. Like, this person is saying that the house is currently for sale, but it's not selling, so they're gonna rent it. They will, and it was like a whole scam. So I reached out to somebody that I knew. I was like, hey, listen, this is going on. Is this unit actually for rent? And it turned out that it was a scam. So she listened to her gut, and it was really great, because we were able to save her from spending the $1,500 of the deposit that she would have lost by giving it to these people. So that being said, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns that a rental might be a scam, don't hesitate to reach out. We know a lot of people here that we can reach out to and see if we can find more information. We're also not super shy about just calling up random people. So we can always help with that type of thing. We would much rather make a couple phone calls and know that you're making a good decision and that you're not being scammed than to find out after that you actually lost a bunch of money. All right, so that's rental. So IRAC regulates the rental side of things with their forms, with their regulations, with the rent increases, all of those things. It should be noted that a deposit, so different provinces have different standards. In PEI, rental deposit can be no more than 1 month's rent. So when you're renting a place, it's very common that you have a damage deposit. It can be no more than 1 month's rent. And that is to be held in trust by the landlord. And then they are required to give you back your deposit when your lease is up and you have moved out within 2 weeks. If they're planning to withhold some of that due to damage above and beyond normal wear and tear, they are required to give you a form outlining that within those 2 weeks after you move out, and the amount that they're withholding for damage. And they have to actually use that money to rectify the damage. They can't just say, oh, you put a hole in the wall and they hang a mirror over it. That's not allowed. They have to actually use any money that they keep from you for fixing the damage. Receipts have to be provided. It's a very formal process. So you cannot use that as the last month's rent. Well, I mean, if your landlord's nice, we always tell our landlords that we're working with, do not let the damage deposit go towards the last month's rent, because then if there is any damage above and beyond, you have nothing to pay that out of. So damage deposit usually gets paid upon signing of the lease, and then your first month rent is due on the first of the day of the lease. Then you pay it every day or every month, until the end of the lease, at which point then you move out and you get the damage deposit back. On PEI, this is something that's different from Ontario that I know. Ontario, I've heard, cannot say this is a pet friendly, this is a not pet friendly rental unit. That's just something I've heard. On PEI, there are pet friendly units and there are not pet friendly units. So just because you're getting a unit doesn't mean you're allowed to have pets. Even within, right now I'm in a condo. Within this condo, any pets are not allowed to be greater than 40 pounds. So if you have a Great Dane dog, then even if it was a pet-friendly unit, the dog does not adhere to those requirements of the condo board. So therefore, there are still some regulations out there. I should have Brooke do a talk about pets and PEI. That'll be one. I know somebody was asking the other day about like off-leash dog parks and stuff. So that might be a good topic, pets and PEI. Okay, sorry, random thought. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions about it, please let me know. I'm not super able to check my messages right now because Brooke's not here. Okay, so the other thing that IRAC regulates has to do with the Lands Protection Act. In 1982, there was a corporation that was looking to purchase like 6,000 acres on PEI, and the legislative body didn't want this to happen for whatever reasons. So they actually passed new legislation in 1982 called the Lands Protection Act. And the purpose of this act was to keep island lands in islanders' hands. What they didn't want to see is a lot of non-resident companies or people coming onto PEI and buying up the land and holding it for whatever reason. So they passed this legislation. What legislation? What it means is that if you are a non-resident, to purchase land that is greater than 5 acres or has shore frontage of greater than 165 feet, you are required to submit an application to IRAC for permission to purchase this land. If you are a current non-resident, but you are planning to move to the island and live on this property, then you still have to submit the application, but you are very much more likely to have it approved. If you are a non-resident who is just intending to hold the property and maybe use it as a seasonal residence or as a family residence or something like that, where you're not going to be living in it as your primary residence, then there is a chance that this application for permission for you to purchase it does not get approved. What are some reasons that this might be? You might not be approved if the land that you are purchasing is in an area of high non-resident ownership. So there's these flagged red zones on PEI in which there is a high number of non-residents who own property there. So one of these is, we've heard Cable Head East, just above St. Peter's Bay is a place. Down in Pennette, just past past Earnscliffe, Mount Buchanan, like that peninsula down there. So that's one place, kind of like Stanley Bridge, New London. There's a lot of, like North Rustico, there's a lot of non-residents that live there as well. So those areas, if you have to submit an application and you're not planning to live in the house, then there is a chance that your application gets denied. If, however, you just purchase a property that is less than 5 acres or does not have any shore frontage of greater than 165 feet, then you do not have to submit an application to purchase the land. It is only if and when the property is of a larger size with shore frontage or without shore frontage. So that's the big thing there. There are a lot of people who come into possession of land either through the gifting from a family member or through an estate and the passing of family, and they inherit the land. That is not subject to IRAC approval. So, for example, my dad can't purchase any more land because he has been bequeathed land of greater than 5 acres. So he's not able to purchase anything anymore because he's not a resident of PEI and he owns like 20 acres, right? So that's the kind of thing. But if you're gifted the land, that's great. Then you don't have to do an application. With the application, so the application, there is a cost. It costs $550 or 1% of the agreed upon purchase price. That is done through a lawyer. The lawyer completes the application form. So there are additional legal fees to do this application. And you submit the application to IRAC with the fee attached. A hearing is had basically every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. IRAC has a hearing to review any Land Protection Act applications. Then they make a recommendation to council, and then the council will go through and approve or deny the applications. It's about a 2-week window from the date that you have to have the application in until you get the final approval or not approval from IRAC. And this is often within the context of a purchase. So it is a condition of the purchase. So just like you have an inspection condition or an insurance condition or a financing condition, there is an additional clause that your realtor can use, which is an IRAC application condition. It's very common that you will see, like on the back end as a realtor, we'll see that a property and the conditional time period for that sale is like 2 months. And that's just because they need the extra time to do the application with their lawyer and then have an IRAC hearing. So they'll work through the other conditions ahead of time, but then they're still waiting on IRAC approval for them to purchase. And it can take a little bit longer. Like I said, it can take only 2 weeks, but that's a very efficient lawyer that's going to get it done that quickly. It is something that often takes an extra month or so to get done. One thing, if a property just came on the market, and you're like, oh, this is the perfect property for my family to have a cottage for years to come kind of thing. That property actually has to be listed, and resident islanders have to have the opportunity to purchase that property ahead of time. A non-resident, if it has to go through an IRAC application, a non-resident is likely going to have their application denied if there are resident islanders who want to purchase it. I know that my broker has told us a story about how he had a property that was listed. They had buyers from the States that came in. They wanted to purchase it. They went conditional. And then another offer came in from somebody who lived on PEI. And basically it was like, listen, you're better off just pulling your accepted offer because you're not from here. There's a resident whose offer will trump yours. You won't have your application approved because there is an islander resident here that wants to purchase this land. So preference is given to residents of PEI in cases of this. So that's pretty much where we stand on IRAC and the Land Protections Act. It's an interesting thing. I like it. I like that we have this thing that's trying to keep island lands in islanders' hands. It's since the New York Times article came out that we've had so many Americans reaching out to us, asking about what would be the process of moving here. Like, what's a great, let's do a cottage. We've had a number of people reach out looking for that. And just the idea that knowing that there's such a beautiful island and it is very appealing to so many people, but that the whole goal is to also make sure that islanders are able to have a piece of the island too. I think that's really important. I think it really keeps it relevant to everybody here to know that they can have a piece of the island, and that it's not just, wealthy people from away who need another vacation home to come to. So that's where that is. I wanted to thank you guys very much. I don't see any questions. Not that let me see. if you plan to move, what does the time frame look like to have a property approved? Yeah. So if you're looking to move and live on the property, if you're planning to relocate here, the time frame doesn't really change. It's still like that month probably to get your application through IRAC and be approved. Again, if you're planning to move here and live here, then it's probably gonna be approved. No reason that it wouldn't. The application process is very much the same. If it's acreage versus shore frontage, it's still the same process. It's still the same council hearing. It's still the same council approval and then timeline. It's just going to affect really purchase price. If you're looking at a farm purchase that has shore frontage, and I mean, I was looking at some acreage the other day that was just up past Basin Head, up near East Point, and I'm trying to remember. It wasn't a huge amount of land, and the acreage, because it was waterfront on South Lake, the entire purchase would have been like 1.5 million for this kind of acreage on the water. So that's really where the big difference is going to come in, is that you're just going to end up spending more to have both shore frontage and acreage, but the whole process of applying to IRAC is the same based on it. Where you'll see a difference as well is in if you're just looking at acreage in the heart of PEI or an inland area, you're probably not going to really run into too many issues with it being a red flagged area of too many non-residents. Whereas if you're looking at shore frontage, you're probably looking at a much more desirable area for non-residents to purchase. And so it might be a little bit more susceptible to not getting approved, but I don't know that for sure. It would just depend on where the land is and the shore frontage, if that makes sense. That was a question from Christina. Tenancy, leaving the property vacant until I can get there. Yeah, so there are, so what I say is that if you're gonna do a rental, then do a fixed term rental, whether it's a year, whether it's 6 months, because at the end of that rental agreement, rather than having them sign another one, you can just say, listen, we're done. We're going to terminate this rental agreement. And so you have to move out at the end of the rental term. Additionally, if it's your property and you're planning to move into it, it's one of the few reasons that you can actually evict a tenant. So there is a form, I think it's form 4B, and it is an eviction notice based on you, the owner, would like to take up residency in the unit itself. So there are very restricted reasons that you can actually evict a tenant, and you yourself moving into a unit or a immediate family member, whether it's a son, daughter, sister, parent, if they were moving into the property, then you could evict and cancel the rental agreement ahead of time. But I always say go with a fixed term rental agreement, because if something's not working out, maybe they're just not even your favorite people, or they don't keep it as clean as you like or something like that, then you can just say, this rental agreement, we're not renewing it, we're not signing a new year lease. It's going to be over at the end of the term. That's the good thing about a term rental agreement. The other option is an indeterminate. It's basically a month to month, but because it's on a forever renewing lease, I would be like concerned about your ability to terminate the lease, because it's essentially indeterminate. There is no changeover. You don't sign a new lease every month. It's just a perpetual lease. So that's why I do say do a term lease, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year. You definitely have that finite date that you can say, we're not renewing this lease for another term, right? But like I said, if it is your property, then you do have the option to serve them with Form 4B, I think it is, in which you are planning to take possession of the property to live in it yourself. Yeah. All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's any more questions. If you guys think of anything and you want to reach out, send me a DM. Totally up for it. Let me know what you think, and we will chat again soon. I haven't decided what March's live is going to be about. If you guys have a suggestion, please let me know. If there's anything that's really pressing in your brain that you think you need to know ahead of time, then I would love to know so that I can plan to talk to you guys about that. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you soon. Bye.